Now visually, let us understand blocking and non-blocking nature in Node.js, and for that we will use example of our FS module which we have seen in our last lectures. So here this is the code we have written for synchronous approach. First we are importing this FS module, then using this read file sync method we are reading the content of the file, and finally we are just displaying the content of the file. And this was our synchronous way of reading the file. So in this way, what happens? Each statement will be processed one after another. That is, line by line, the statements will be executed. But now this can be problem with slow operations because each line will be blocking the execution of rest of the code. So that is the reason this synchronous approach is called as blocking code, because operations will only be executed one after the other, and once the first operation is complete, only then it is going to proceed with the next code. So that is the reason this synchronous approach is called as blocking code, because the operation is going to block rest of the course. For example, if I am having two operation, second operation will not be starting unless and until first operation is completed. So here, just imagine we are having multiple users, and one user is requesting for reading the text file, second user is requesting some data, third user is requesting some data, and fourth user wants to do some registration. So I will show you very simple version of what happens behind the scene of Node.js, because we are having multiple steps here to understand, but later we will go in deep. Now only to understand blocking and non-blocking nature we will see this oversimplified version. So now let us understand what will be the problem when our code execution is blocked in Node.js. So here I am having this node.js process, which is where our application code will be running. And this is my synchronous way of writing the code. And inside Node.js, we will only have one single thread. Inside this node process, our code will be executed, and this thread is nothing but it is set of instruction that will be running in computer CPU. As we have seen multiple times, Node.js is nothing but it is single threaded, and it is going to use only one thread for entire application. So which means here I am having multiple users, and multiple users are trying to access this application. In this case, each user will be using the same thread. Basically, each and every user is going to access the same thread. Whenever users are trying to interact with the application, the code which will be run for each and every user, it will be executed in the same thread at the same place in the computer's running application. And this will be true for if you're having two users, 10 users, or 1,000 users. So for each and every user, code will be executed in this one single thread. Now suppose imagine this first user is trying to read the text file. So this text file will be passed in this single thread. And now this text file is very large and it will be taking 10 seconds to complete. So in this case, what happens? All the other users has to wait for 10 seconds, because now our main single thread is blocked. And once this operation is complete, only then other users can request for the data and they will be getting the result. So here our execution will be blocked for other users, because first user who has requested for reading the file, that file is having large content. So that is the reason execution is stopped for other users. And definitely, this is a huge problem. Once the execution is blocked, users will not be able to request the data. Basically, user will not be able to get the desired output unless and until this first operation is complete. So in this case, as a developer, this will be our job to write asynchronous code so that we can give good experience to users. So now you understood what is the blocking nature in Node.js. So now you might have question, then how can we solve this? So for this, the solution is very simple, and that is using asynchronous code. And this will be non-blocking. And this is what we have understood. First, we have to require the module. Then we are simply reading the file. Inside this, we are passing callback function. And after that, simply we are just logging this message. So here what happens? Our callback function will be registered and directly it is just going to move to the next line. And once this reading the file is completed, only then this callback function will be executed. So in this case, our code will not be blocked. So easily we can upload the work which is very heavy and that will be worked in the background. And only after the work is done, the callback function which we have registered, it will be called and we will be having the result. So now let us understand this Node.js process. And here we are having our single thread and this is nothing but our asynchronous way. So here inside this, when a user is trying to read the file and if the file is larger in size and we have written in asynchronous way, then what happens? In background, it will be running our code. And definitely this will be time consuming task. It will take some time to read all the contents of the file. So during this time, other users, they can request the data. Again, other user can request the data. They can perform some registration. Whatever operation they want, they can easily perform. And in between, if other user is requesting for large content or whatever task they are requesting, if it is time consuming, then simply it will be running in the background. After that, once this operation is completed, then only it is going to execute. So in this way, we are not blocking execution of the code. Whatever long running task we are having, that will be running in the background. So this is how Node.js will be handling asynchronous behavior in order to implement this non-blocking IO model. So here IO stands for input output, which basically means we can access the file system and also we can handle network requests. So this is the actual reason why we will be using callbacks inside Node.js. But if you take other programming languages, like if I take an example of PHP, in that the way it works is completely different because for each and every new user, a new thread will be created. But inside Node.js, we only have one single thread. So each and every user is going to access the same thread whenever they are accessing our application. So that is the reason long running tasks will be pushed in the background and only after it completes, it will be executed. And one more important point, you should always make a note. Each and every callback function is not going to make our code asynchronous. If I take an example of array map method, reduce method or filter method, the callbacks which we are passing is not making our code asynchronous. So in Node.js, we are having some functions using which we can easily write our asynchronous code. Like we have seen read file, write file, append file. So using all those functions, we can write asynchronous code. Always keep in mind all the callbacks which we write is not going to make our code asynchronous. So this is the oversimplified version to explain the concept of blocking and non-blocking nature in Node.js.